Hey everyone, welcome back to K-Korner, the channel where we dive into the wild world of entitled people and their unbelievable stories. Hope you enjoy it. And without further ado, let's go. First of all, English is not my first language, so I apologize in advance for spelling and vocabulary errors. I am not sure if this exactly falls under malicious compliance, but I wanted to share it anyway. This story is a short one concerning my mom. For context, the house she lives in now was formerly rented to our grandmother, who passed away around the time my parents got divorced a couple of years ago. My parents built the house in 1990, around the same time an older woman did on the neighboring property. Let's call that woman Rita. When I was a toddler, we lived in the same house as my grandmother but then moved. I still remember that something was always a bit odd about Rita. She was particular. Her house smelled stale and of old shoes stored in a wet basement. She had been a teacher before retirement, a strict one judging by her personality. Her whole property is fenced in, and at the front gate there is no bell. As far as I know, you'd have to yell and hope she was home if you wanted something from her or climb the fence. This is something I haven't figured out in 28 years yet. Rita always had her own opinions, and was strange when it came to cars from visitors or even vehicles from the plumber or handyman parked in the tiny dead-end street our houses were located around. When my sister and I got old enough to drive a car, and we'd park at the side of said dead-end street, or there was a birthday gathering, you could bet all your money Rita would get her car out of her garage on her property and park it outside of her fence as well. Everyone would have to squeeze their car around hers then. She does it to this day, just to make a point, I guess. When my grandmother died, my mom renovated the whole house to avoid being reminded of her. Our father had been pressuring her to get out of the old family house and move into the one our grandmother died in barely 8 weeks before. Rita would give her unwelcomed 2 cents about how it was different from how it had been for nearly 30 years. She would ask what my mom would do with the flowers and plants my grandma had loved and tended to all those years, when my mom remodeled the garden as well, and if she thought my grandmother would like the changes since the house and garden did not resemble their former appearance. These were statements you just don't want to hear during such a difficult time. To cut this story short, Rita did many more things in her own form of demonstration of disapproval, or she would phrase criticism like a well-meant comment. One day, my mom ordered big metal plates, around 1 by 2 meters, with long stilts to hold them upright just at her side of the fence to Rita's garden. The fence is low and doesn't block the view. This sort of metal is supposed to oxidize as garden decoration, and with a second purpose of creating a divider while the hedge was still growing. Here in Germany, there are many regulations for everything, some more sensible and logical than others. One of them is that for such metal dividers to be installed, you need your neighbor's approval when they are 2.00 meters high or higher and located between your properties. My mom had no intention of asking Rita because she would say no. Not that Rita asked, when she planted her stuff right at the fence, and it grew into my mom's flower beds. So, a family friend dug up the holes, filled them with concrete, and erected the metal dividers at exactly 1.99 meters in height. This way, my mom was complying with the laws, and would have easily denied any accusation if Rita had taken issue with the new additions. They were under the 2-meter mark, after all. When I came over for a visit after their installation, my mom proudly showed them to me, and told me why the exact height was so particular. We raised our wine glasses to this brilliant idea, and each time I see the metal dividers, I am reminded of how mischievous my mom can be if she wants to, and how Rita has to look at oxidized metal plates from her side of the fence. I work at a company where some people, including myself, come in early to do prep work while the janitorial staff cleans and prepares for the day. It's a large place, and this particular part of the company is usually empty except for me and a single custodian. There is a school crossing nearby, so people often park in our lot and wait in their cars until they see kids arriving. A few weeks ago, our custodian, Cindy, was taking out the trash and noticed the new crossing guard, Brenda, who is usually with her husband but was alone that day. Cindy told Brenda that if there's an emergency or something, since it's dark in the morning and Brenda might be alone in the back alley, she could ring the delivery doorbell, and Cindy would probably hear it. Brenda thanked Cindy for this offer. It should be noted that while I'm in the same section as Cindy in my office area, I don't hear the bell ring. The next day, Brenda rang the doorbell. Since Cindy was busy working and far enough away in the large company, she didn't hear it immediately. Brenda rang the bell multiple times until Cindy, who was moving around, finally heard it and ran to the back door to let Brenda in. Brenda needed to use the bathroom. Cindy was frustrated because she thought it was an emergency, but out of kindness, she allowed Brenda to use the bathroom. It should be noted that Brenda is known in the area for her troublesome behavior and clueless actions. People know she lives just 2 blocks from where she works as a crossing guard, and drives there, making it a 3-minute drive home after her 30-minute crossing duty. The next morning, Cindy was cleaning by a window, far from the delivery area, when she was startled by a bang on the tall windows. Brenda was standing on her toes, pounding on the glass, and screaming that she needed to use the bathroom. Cindy, frustrated, motioned for Brenda to go to the back door and let her in. Cindy apologized, explaining she couldn't always hear the bell while cleaning, hinting at her frustration. Brenda, annoyed, mentioned she was about to wet herself because of a large coffee, and went to the bathroom without even saying thank you. This behavior became a pattern. For the next week, Brenda rang the bell every morning to use the bathroom. Not just once, but several times, with pauses in between, if Cindy wasn't fast enough to answer. Cindy, already frustrated, had to hustle to the door each time. Cindy knew where Brenda lived and wondered why she didn't just use the bathroom at home, doubting any pressing medical issues that would prevent Brenda from holding it for 30 minutes. On Monday, Cindy told me everything that had been happening. Cindy, a hard-working and honest person, felt her kindness was being taken advantage of. She didn't want to answer the bell anymore, and asked what she should do. I told her we weren't obligated to let Brenda use the bathroom, especially since she had abused the emergency bell. We could get in trouble for letting non-employees in daily, despite the minimal security risk. I offered to talk to Brenda, but Cindy felt bad and asked me not to. She decided she wouldn't answer the door anymore and would pretend she couldn't hear Brenda, hoping she'd get the hint. Apparently, the bell rang several times in succession later that day, but Cindy ignored it. When school let out, Brenda tried to make up for lost time by ringing the bell to be let in while we were open and full of employees. A third employee, Alice, who is friendly with Cindy and had heard the whole story, opened the door and told Brenda this wasn't her personal toilet. She instructed Brenda not to ring the bell anymore, and to figure out her own bathroom solution. The next morning, Cindy was outside taking out the trash when Brenda awkwardly told her that Alice had yelled at her. Cindy replied, "Yeah, I heard that," and paused, waiting to see if Brenda had anything else to add. When Brenda just stared back awkwardly, Cindy went back inside to continue her job. It's been 2 days, and Brenda hasn't rung the bell since. In 1973, my parents had enough money to build a small ranch house in the country. The local bank approved the mortgage and signed a contract to provide Bob with the funds to build the house. Bob, however, was overbooking himself all over town, leaving his clueless workers to do the actual work. The build took longer and longer, with more and more work needing to be ripped out and redone. We're not talking about using the wrong color paint or nailing up some wonky trim here. The architect forgot to fully erase a line on the blueprints, and the framers built a wall through the bathtub. My mother was told, "Don't put anything heavy in the kitchen cabinets," because they were attached to the drywall, not the studs, using a few roofing nails through the back of each cabinet. The garage door opening was framed into the living room instead of towards the driveway, and so on. When the bank's representative showed up for the final inspection, my parents met him in the front yard and refused to sign off on Bob's work. The representative became angry, as the bank had paid Bob a lot of money. He strode to the front door and pulled on the doorknob, whereupon the entire door, casing included, fell on him. It had simply been wedged, not nailed into place. The bank called Bob, who finally showed up to supervise the work himself. The only problem was that Bob wasn't any better at building a house than his workers were. My parents still refused to sign off on the house. My mother was a stay-at-home mom in a nasty rental with 2 tiny children, while my dad was working 2 jobs during this time. Throughout the entire process, the bank and Bob treated them very poorly, bullying my mom and lying to my dad. What should have been an exciting time for my parents was ruined. My mom cried a lot. My dad got depressed. Finally, the bank threatened my parents with foreclosure, and Bob threatened to sue my parents for breach of contract because the bank refused to pay him any more money. So my exhausted parents went to an attorney and gave him the rundown. Plumbing, electrical, tiling issues. The whole sorry mess. My parents were scared. All they had was their small down payment savings, so if this became a lengthy court battle, the bank and Bob would win. The attorney Tom was kind, but my dad said he could tell that he and Mom were doomed from Tom's facial expressions as he sorted through the paperwork. Then, abruptly, Tom smiled. "Let's get everyone together for a meeting," he told my parents. "Tomorrow." So my parents, Tom, the bank's representative, the bank's attorney, Bob, and Bob's attorney met at the bank. Tom didn't give anyone else time to begin. He said, "Well, my clients have decided that they no longer want this house. Please remove it." Everyone else started to laugh. "Remove it? Have you lost your mind?" Tom, in a sweeping, theatrical gesture, placed a deed on the table. "My clients own the land the house is sitting on outright. They no longer want the house. Get the house off my client's land." Bob's attorney stared at the deed, then turned and stared at Bob. "You built a house on land you don't own?" Bob nodded. The bank's attorney started yelling at the bank's representative. "You didn't finance the land the house is on." The representative stammered. No," Tom said firmly. "As I said, gentlemen, you're trespassing on my client's land. I expect the house to be removed and the land returned to its original state at once." My dad said he'll remember the blank looks everyone on the other side of the table passed to one another for his whole life. Sure, the bank could foreclose on a house that wouldn't exist by the end of the week, with no way to recoup the money. They didn't even own the land it was on. Bob was out the 50% he'd paid out of pocket, plus he was on the hook for tearing down the house and removing it. On top of that, the bank would undoubtedly want him to repay the initial 50% they'd given him. Could they have gone after my parents? Sure. A foreclosure would have meant bad credit for my parents moving forward. They might lose their down payment, but to sign off on the house in its condition at that time would have meant thousands and thousands of dollars in cash to replace and repair everything from the roof to the basement before the house could be safely lived in. The bank knew my parents didn't have that kind of money. They're the ones who approved the mortgage. Suddenly, my parents were good people. It was all such a misunderstanding, and the bank and Bob couldn't do enough for them. The house was brought in line with the original blueprints and specifications immediately, at no extra cost to my parents, but at considerable cost to Bob. My parents signed the mortgage. Bob got the rest of his money, and just about broke even on the build. The bank's representative was fired, and Tom, the extraordinary attorney, got a memorable tale of triumph to recall to fellow attorneys for the rest of his life. Before you question this tale, please remember that 1973 was 50 years ago. Banks did things differently back then. Smaller rural banks in particular were not run the same way the bigger city banks were. There were far fewer federal regulations, and in a smaller community people didn't always follow them anyway. I'm pretty sure they don't always follow them now. Yes, they built a wall through the bathtub. No, I'm not making that up. I even left out how a plumber left his lunch bag on a partially built kitchen cabinet, but the cabinet maker didn't feel it was his job to move the bag, so he left it there and built the rest of the cabinet around it. I don't know where Bob found these people, but they were gems, every one of them. I must admit that I'm immensely surprised at the traction this story has gotten. The bank and Bob put together very poorly written and pretty much unenforceable contracts. My parents' attorney figured this out, and the bank and Bob had to back off. I thought this was interesting, but surely not the one and only time this happened. Aren't contracts being written all the time by clueless people? Is this really that unique? I guess we should be glad it is. So some backstory first. I work at a large grocery store chain. As someone who stocks groceries, replaces items that have been left or returned throughout the day, and various other chores around the store, it's a pretty small store, so most of the employees can do almost all of the tasks. So this particular night I was putting away a cart of items that customers decided they didn't want, overstock, or were damaged. There was a separate area where damaged items went, obviously. Now I should preface this with the fact that I'm not completely deaf. I can faintly hear things like slamming doors, loud phones, ringtones, and some things like that. Though I cannot hear voices at all, even loud yelling. While I am deaf, I know sign language, have a large pin and lanyard that I wear, that informs people that I am in fact deaf. In addition to this, I have a small notebook that has a variety of pre-written responses to questions, sort of like flashcards. Though communication is difficult sometimes, I try my best to make things work, and I am very prepared. Most people are understanding, work with me, and we get through the conversation. Some kind people even sign with me. That always makes me smile. I am pretty young and don't look like the typical hearing-impaired person, so when people sometimes get a little grumpy because I don't respond right away, they're very apologetic. Not this time. This is where the story gets good. So I'm mulling along one evening, and decided to get an early start on the overstock from the day, which was filling a shopping cart to the max. Since this was earlier than I normally began, there were more people still in the store, as opposed to when I usually started. No big deal, I started anyway. About half a shopping cart later, I'm in the paper towels section when I feel someone roughly poke me in the shoulder. I jump and turn around, startled to see this lady. She's taller than me, and I'm no slouch. I'm 6 feet tall, or 72 inches. She is very thin, probably mid-50s, and has frizzy blonde hair. This back in September of 2020, and of course she doesn't have a mask on. She begins to what I assume was yelling, judging by the aggressive look on her face. I begin to point to my lanyard and ears, trying to communicate that I can't hear her. According to the nice customer, who I will introduce in a moment, she was saying things like, "I'm talking to you, I've been trying to get your attention for 5 minutes." She then takes a step forward and grabs my lanyard, yanking it violently, and it gets unsnapped from around my neck. She throws it to the ground. At this point, I'm very nervous and beginning to panic. I try to actually say I can't hear, but I'm not sure how it came out, as I've never actually heard my own voice. My significant other says it sounds very cute, however. It's at this point the nice customer enters the picture. I see him round the corner. A 30-something-year-old man, I assume, rounds the aisle, and walks up to the crazy Karen, asking what the problem was. This is all what he wrote down for me, saying what he said after the incident. The nice customer looks over to me, and I frantically point to the pin on my mask and grab my notebook and scribble down. I'm deaf and I don't know why she's yelling at me. The customer turns to Karen and they exchange some words. Things like, "Can't you see he's deaf? Why are you yelling at a kid like that?" And responses like, "He's not deaf, he's just ignoring me because he's a lazy piece of trash." This goes on for a few minutes and I finally begin to cry. As this has caused a scene with people starting to surround us, it finally attracted the attention of my two managers, the store manager and the district manager. The store manager walks up to me while the district manager walks to the customer and the Karen, who have now really started shouting at each other. The store manager knows sign and asks me if I'm all right. I say I am, and wipe the tears from my face and grab my lanyard from the ground. My manager tells me to grab my things and wait for her in the employee break room. About 15 minutes later, the managers walked in with a police officer. The Karen had been arrested. The store manager explained to me in sign language that Karen had been arrested for third-degree assault, and the officer needed a written statement and asked if I wanted to press charges. I happily say yes and give my statement. The nice customer stuck around, and I wrote him a thank you note. The store manager also gave him a gift card for being an upstanding citizen. That was by far the worst experience I've ever had with a customer, but I'm thankful that awesome people like the nice customer and my 2 managers exist. Also, the Karen got sentenced to a few months in jail, probation, and was fined a hefty amount, and I honestly hope it destroys her life. Enjoying the stories yet? If you do, please subscribe, like, and comment. For context, I am a 16-year-old transgender male who is out to my parents but is very unaccepted and deals with daily transphobia. I'm also supposed to be leaving for university in just over a year, so I am currently in the process of going to open days. This is important. My parents have been divorced since I was 13 but are generally on good terms. As I've already mentioned, I'm supposed to be visiting university open days at the moment, in preparation for next year when I'll leave, but it's very difficult to get on any. My mom has recently stated that I'm not allowed to book any until my end-of-year exams come through and are good enough to go to university. I still have plenty of time to turn them around, but it feels as though this is it. It's also worth stating that most open days are in June, and most have had to be booked months ago to get a place. So, while my friends are looking at the universities they want to go to, I'm stuck waiting until my parents decide whether or not my grades are good enough. I thought that was the end of it, but I finally managed to convince my dad to take me to one. However, he said that I'm not allowed to look at any universities that are more than around an hour and maybe a half away by car. This is a major issue, as we live in a rural area where most of the universities are not great and don't have the course I want to do. It's not very well known. I'm basically limited to one decent university, the one I visited, which was good, but I definitely still want to see others. Apparently, they're too far, even though it's only like 2.5 hours away, which isn't even that bad considering where we live. They're willing to drive further than that for my brother's 15 sport matches. I'm desperate to leave because I don't feel safe, and my gender dysphoria is slowly getting worse. I think I might have an eating disorder, possibly undiagnosed attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, diagnosed autism spectrum disorder, but I think that was school-guided, as I can't imagine my parents caring enough to get me the diagnosis. I've started self-harming again, used to minor self-harm through ages 5 to 10, though that wasn't with the intent of harming myself, it was to help control my anger. They just gave up on me, and I only stopped because I was getting bullied for it every day. They don't care about the fact that I've been bullied for the entirety of my time through school either. My mental health is just worsening every day. I hate myself, and my whole life has fallen apart ever since I came out. The moment I turn 18, I need to leave for university because I can't start to even properly socially transition, only among friends at school, but I need parental permission for name, pronoun change in the school system. I daren't try to legally or medically transition until I leave. When I came out as transgender, I was basically told that I'm still a girl and that I'd have to prove that I'm transgender if I ever want to be accepted. This is absolutely unfair, but I know this is what it's like when legally, medically transitioning sometimes. I was forced to answer some questions which were also unfair, like what are the benefits, risks of being transgender, as though it's my decision to have all this gender dysphoria. My parents are also trying to push me towards a local apprenticeship, which would mean I'd still live at home. I don't see myself surviving past 18 if that's what my future holds. I can't live my life as who I really am until I leave. If I start to transition before then, I'm scared I'll get thrown out with nowhere to go. If I can't leave, I'm trapped. The university course I want to do is desperate for jobs as well, so I'd have a good escape once I was done, but I simply need a way out. They also need to know where I am 24/7. That includes tracking me everywhere I go. I'm not even allowed out without a family member. If I literally walk the 5 minutes from the park to either of my parents' houses, I need to text them the moment I get back, and they'll watch me from their phones. We live in a quiet rural town where the only thing that could happen is me getting hit by a car. Even if I'm literally just leaving the room, I have to provide an explanation as to where I'm going. It is slowly killing me, and I don't have anywhere to go. With the National Football League playoffs back on, I thought you all might enjoy this football-related revenge story. I'm a huge San Francisco 49ers fan, the rabid all-day tailgate in the parking lot type. A few years ago, we made it back to the Super Bowl. I was working at a consulting firm with a handful of accounts I would interact with directly. One client in particular knew how big of a Niners fan I was. I was the day-to-day lead on his account. He really liked working with me, and we became friends, often grabbing drinks or dinner after our meetings. He had access to a pair of extra company seats to the game, and as a thank you, he wanted to give them to me as a gift. He passed the tickets over to the partner on that account, who I will refer to as Unpleasant Partner, to be given to me as a surprise. The game came and went. We lost. It was disappointing. The next time we met, we went to drinks afterward, and he mentioned, "Hey, by the way, why didn't you go to the game? I heard someone else was in your seats." I asked, "What game?" He said, "The Super Bowl." Confused, I answered, "I didn't have seats to the Super Bowl." He told me that he gave Unpleasant Partner a pair of his company tickets for me as a gift so I could attend. I had no idea what he was talking about. He looked shocked, told me to quietly ask around about it and get back to him. When I was back in the office the next week, I found out through one of the secretaries that Unpleasant Partner had given a pair of Super Bowl tickets to another one of his clients as a gift from our company. I might have let this sort of thing go to keep the peace under different circumstances, but these were seats on the 30-yard line to see the 49ers play in the Super Bowl. I was furious. I considered confronting Unpleasant Partner myself, but I realized it was the client who had noticed I wasn't there in the first place. So if I let him handle it, there would be no blowback on me. So I texted him, "Hey, I just wanted to thank you so much for thinking of me with those seats. It appears that they were given to another one of our firm's clients." He texted back right away, in all caps, "Are you kidding me?" And then, "Pretend I never told you, let me handle it." He followed up with me about formulating a plan. A few days later, we were asked to come down for a meeting in their office. The client requested the partner be present, which was not entirely unusual, so Unpleasant Partner and I hopped a flight the next week and headed over to their office. Little did Unpleasant Partner know, my client had orchestrated a wonderfully awkward little show to catch him red-handed. When we entered the conference room, it was all the usual suspects along with a woman in her 30s we didn't recognize. My client immediately introduced, "Unpleasant Partner, this is Stephanie such and such, vice president from other department. She wanted to sit in on this meeting." "Hey, Op, you guys must already know her from the Super Bowl," she then responded as she went to shake my hand. "Oh, I don't think so. Did we meet there? I'm sorry if I forgot," client responded. "Geez, Steph, how much did you have to drink? They were sitting right next to you." Client looked at me, and I said, "Sorry, client, I wasn't there. Are you thinking of someone else?" At this point, Unpleasant Partner was looking visibly uncomfortable, probably trying to come up with an excuse. He started with an when Stephanie said over him, "No, so-and-so from other company were in the other seats. By the way, I was wondering why we gave company seats to those guys. Is there a project we're working with them on that I don't know about? Obviously not. They were in completely different industries. It would be like Coca-Cola partnering with John Deere." Unpleasant Partner let out an again, and the client immediately spoke over him, asking, "Unpleasant Partner, I gave you those tickets for Op." At this point, Unpleasant Partner was turning bright red. He responded, "Oh, well, he wasn't able to make it, so he must have given the seats away to someone else," and turned to me looking for me to cover for him. The client smirked at me. I responded, "What are you talking about? Client, you gave me tickets to the Super Bowl?" The client suddenly raised his voice. "Unpleasant Partner, those tickets were a personal thank you gift from me to Op. Did you give them away to someone else?" Pause. "Was it another client?" Unpleasant Partner butted in with, "Oh, maybe something got mixed up in the office?" The client went quiet for what probably seemed like an eternity to Unpleasant Partner. He then looked down, grabbed his portfolio and iPad, put them into his briefcase and said, "I think this meeting is over. Op, it seems as if I owe you a thank you gift. Let's go to lunch. Stephanie, you're welcome to join Unpleasant Partner. I need to evaluate our relationship. Please go back home and expect to hear from us next week. Unpleasant Partner suggested he would like to join, presumably to do damage control, and Stephanie sternly told him, I don't think that's a good idea. She asked the front desk to see Unpleasant Partner out. As soon as he was in the elevator, we all broke out laughing hysterically. Stephanie wasn't really a vice president, just an employee at the company who the client had drafted into helping with his pre-planned meeting skit. But she did end up coming to lunch with us, and was a fellow Niners fan and total blast to hang out with. On our way to the restaurant, I got a desperate text from Unpleasant Partner saying I needed to cover for the firm, and that we could discuss things when I got back. I replied, yes, we need to talk, but I'll see what I can do. The client told me to wait a couple of hours, and then respond to him. 1. To expect invoices for the resale value of the Super Bowl tickets. Resale is way above face value. It was over $10,000. As well as our lunch, he picked a pricey spot and made a big show of overspending, and that he expected them to be paid immediately. 2. That I be given a direct apology. 3. A written apology to his company for what he considered theft. And 4. That he would only interact with me or another one of our firm's partners, never Unpleasant Partner. This whole thing caused a stir with the other partners, and I actually came off looking great because it appeared that I had made a good faith effort to save the client for the firm despite being the victim in this situation. The client was transferred to another partner, which meant Unpleasant Partner lost his profit share on any work with them. Oh, and the other partners in the firm made Unpleasant Partner pay the invoices back out of his salary. In retrospect, I really have no idea what the guy was thinking. Did he seriously believe the client would just not notice me not thanking him for Super Bowl tickets? Anyway, the well was kind of poisoned for me there long term, because Unpleasant Partner wasn't going anywhere. I left the firm a few months later for a much better position. The client ultimately terminated their relationship with that firm a year later. He actually now works with a good friend of mine at a competing firm. I'm still upset I missed out on the Super Bowl, even though we lost, hoping we make it back this year, so I can finally go to one in person. Go Niners. Now that my sister and future brother-in-law have an active restraining order against evil Mama Bear, she has since deleted and shut down her Facebook account and is barely leaving her house, or so her neighbors tell me. Rumor has it that she's shutting down her Airbnb as well, until she sells her house. On Tuesday evening, I got a call from evil Mama Bear. I made sure to record it this time. I had her original number blocked, so I guess she either changed it or called from a different phone. At first, I thought the call was from a spammer, but I wasn't certain it was her. I had a gut feeling she was going to try and have one last attempt to tell me off before she eventually moves away. I answered the phone. Hello, entitled mother. Hello, in the iciest way possible. Me. Hang on, immediately turns on the call recorder app. Why are you calling me? You know that you're not supposed to have any contact with me. Unless through my lawyer. I know, and I don't care anymore. You've destroyed me. I have nothing left. They all hate me. That's not my fault, and you know it. You blamed all your nonsense on me for years. Even my sister is calling you out on it now, because she was there and witnessed so much of it. I don't care anymore. I was supposed to be the matriarch of this family. Everyone was supposed to love me and follow me. And now I have no family thanks to you. I should have harmed you while you were still inside of me. If you had never been born, I'd still have a husband and a daughter. But no, I got you. I didn't ask to be born, and I certainly didn't ask for a mother who never showed me any kind of love. You're a monster. You always have been. And you know what? I'm glad karma finally bit you this hard, because monsters like you don't deserve love. When I was a kid, you beat me, tormented me, lied about me, let my sister steal from me, blamed me for things that weren't my fault, and tried to break me. But you know what? It only made me stronger. I'm not afraid of you, and I never will be. Well then, forget you too. I've got nothing left to lose here, except your freedom. I'm recording this call, and I'm notifying the police that you broke the restraining order, and you'll be right back in a jail cell. My lawyer is really itching to get the book thrown at you. You tried to fake being religious just to try and get my sister to take you back. But let me tell you something, God doesn't like competition, and God doesn't like liars. This is why I hate you. You're exactly like your father, too good at everything. I can hear her crying. Don't you dare bring Dad into this. He tried to love you. He tried his utmost to stay married to you, but he just couldn't take the way you treated me, or that you cheated on him. You're the reason he divorced you. I didn't cause any of that. In the end, you're just a money-grubbing control-freak narcissist who loved to make others miserable and played favorites. And look where it's gotten you. That's not my fault. That's all you, 100%. Enough with the crocodile tears at this point, Mother. You're not worth it. I don't even know why you're bothering to call me, other than to try and pin more blame on me for the things you did. I didn't make you a racist. I didn't make you attack my sister. I didn't make you lose your job or cause your divorce. All those things were a direct result of your actions, not mine. You wanted me to be the bad guy so you wouldn't be. But guess what? I'm not the bad guy. I never was. You, on the other hand, are like a fart in an elevator. Nobody wants you around. My sister and I don't want anything from you. We don't want your money, your house. Nothing, just leave us alone and we'll leave you alone. I may be a monster, but at least I'll see you in hell. Somehow I doubt that. Now hang up. Click. And that was it. I'm tempted to report her for breaching the restraining order, but that would mean she'd take longer to move away. We all want her out of town for good. The sooner the better. I also sent my sister a copy of the recording of the phone call, and she said she laughed when she heard it. She nearly peed herself laughing. If evil Mama Bear makes one more attempt to breach the restraining order, the recording is going straight to the police. Edit. I'm getting a few messages saying to call the cops, but my sister and even my lawyer mutually agreed this wouldn't do much. It's her first time breaking the restraining order I have against her. My lawyer tells me at most she'd get some very minor jail time and a fine. Likely nothing serious would happen until a second or third offense. Any more trouble with the law could potentially delay her plan to move away, so it wasn't worth it to call the cops just yet. And believe me, we really want to. Even my lawyer really wanted to. But he put logic ahead of feelings, as did the rest of us. For now, unless evil Mama Bear breaks the restraining order again, we don't need to call the police over a phone call. If this had happened in person or if she physically attacked me, then yes, I'd have had her arrested. If she attempted to break and enter my home, my business, my sister's apartment, or the home or office of anyone I care about, then yes, I'd go right to calling the police. For now, calling them over this isn't worth it yet. But heaven forbid she even calls me again, or even calls my sister, because then I'd call them right away. We have her blocked on every platform. Social media, email, phone, and even third-party messengers like Snapchat. I just hope we never hear from her again. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Share your own experiences and opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay tuned for more epic tales.